So this is the final video for Learning Game A1, and that is about the implications for organizations. What does it mean for businesses, essentially? So the spec tells us that we need to know the consideration of disaster recovery policies, security of data, compatibility, maintenance, getting a service or storage up and running quickly, and performance considerations. Everything is a lot easier to understand when we use examples. So for this example, I'm looking at iCloud, which is a service that you get with Apple phones and tablets like iPads and the Macs. So essentially, it allows you to provide a backup onto the cloud servers, so somewhere other than your device, for your photos and videos, settings and app data, and even messages. What it does is it makes use of Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. So yes, Apple actually does use some Google storage and also Microsoft storage. So it doesn't just use its own private servers, it uses other people's as well. So for a business, one of the important things you need to do is think about which cloud technology you're going to use. So why have Apple used more than one person? Obviously, they want to get as much storage as they can, and maybe they get better services for particular things that they'd like to store. So one of the things that's very, very important when deciding which cloud technology to use is your security. Now, this is extremely important because if a business loses any data, obviously it's going to affect massively your reputation as a company, and also it's going to affect your finances as well. So basically, when you're choosing a cloud technology, you need to think about which ones are going to be the most secure. These cloud providers normally hire special security experts, so you could even look into how secure they're going to be by looking at which staff they employ. Another thing to consider is the maintenance. So who is going to perform all of the maintenance on your files and applications? Obviously, if someone does this for you, it makes everything a lot easier. But you need to think about how often are they going to do it. So maintenance is basically keeping things in good working order. So if you perform maintenance in a school, for example, you might go around and repair all the windows and make sure they're okay. Maybe make sure that the toilets are all working properly, those kind of things. Now with maintenance with computers, we're obviously making sure that everything is up and running, you can access all the data, there's no hardware breakdowns, the software is all up to date. So the most important thing is that the software is kept up to date. So try and make sure you've got all the latest features, make sure that there's no security risks. So the cloud provider that you go with will automatically update all of this software for you. So that's really good because it means that you've got all the features, you've got the most secure version of the software that you're using. So these providers hire experts and engineers to make sure that nothing breaks when they actually perform these updates. So an interesting example of maintenance is with Facebook and Instagram. Facebook actually bought the Instagram app for around $1 billion. So Amazon Web Services was originally used to store all of Instagram's photos. So rather than do that and keep all of the data on Amazon, what Facebook actually did was move all of the data straight to their servers instead. So to make sure that nobody was unable to get on Instagram for any period of time, they developed special software which could move all the data without any downtime at all. So that means no one was without Instagram for any period of time. They actually moved 20 billion photos when they copied from Instagram to Facebook. One useful tool that businesses could use regarding cloud technologies is a virtual machine. Now this can seem quite complicated at first, but essentially what it does is it simulates, or in this particular case, emulates is the fancy word that they use for it. It basically imagines that there's another computer inside of yours. So if you've got a Windows PC, for example, it would be like playing Nintendo games on that PC. One common use is that people run Windows operating system on an Apple Mac. So it allows a company to essentially play different types of games or different types of software on a machine without having to buy new equipment. One thing that you can do and use it for, and it's quite often done, is to simulate a piece of hardware. So if you wanted to create a game, for example, for the new PlayStation 5, the hardware didn't actually exist yet. So you need to emulate, you need to imagine that there's a PlayStation 5 running on a different computer. And that way you're able to test the game to see whether it works before you start finalizing it off. One of the other reasons that or factors that you need to take into account when deciding on cloud technology, things that business need to be aware of, is the speed of the installation. So it's how long does it take for you to get everything up and running. So a traditional server, if you remember, traditional means that it's the old sort of older fashioned one. So be a server within your company. This can take days to set up. You also need to decide exactly what hardware is needed. You have to wait for it to be delivered. You have to install it, or you have to set up all the equipment, install all the software. It can take a really long time. However, with a cloud server, you can essentially get whatever it is that you need to use set up in a few minutes. One very important factor when deciding on the cloud technology is performance. The last thing that you want is poor performance on your systems. You don't want everything to be running slow. You don't want customers to be complaining. You don't want your staff to be finding it difficult. So you need to get the best possible performance that you can get. Now, the cloud services would usually provide excellent service, but obviously you need a fast and reliable internet connection. This is a huge factor because if your internet connection is not very good, then we all know that things aren't going to load very quickly. An excellent specification computer will always be faster running offline than using things on the cloud. The problem with your cloud processing is that everything is reliant on your internet connection. If you have an extremely fast PC and you work on applications which are offline, they will always be faster than using the cloud. However, as we know, computers go out of date very, very quickly and need to be updated, otherwise they will be slower and not particularly good with performance. Whereas with the cloud, obviously you can have very, very quick processing, providing that your internet connection is quite quick. Obviously, the other thing with performance is it depends what type of device that you've got. So if you don't have a particularly good computer, you're not going to have very good luck with running big applications. So if you try to play a very good game on an old PC, you'll know that it's not very good. A very important factor that we've already looked at is things called data backups. So obviously the data needs to be backed up safely and you need to be able to rely on the fact that it is. So cloud service providers, they often make backups of the data as part of their service. So they'll have a regular backup of your files just in case anything goes wrong. Obviously, in some cases, they might charge you more, or they might charge you extra for the best possible backups where you can restore them a little bit quicker than usual. Now, the traditional software, it would rely on you to actually do the backups yourself, so you'd have to have somewhere to save it. The problem with this is if your office building burns down or is flooded, it doesn't matter if your data is backed up, if it's in the same building, then you're not going to have much luck because it's all damaged. Another thing that we need to be aware of as a business is what do we do when things go wrong? So in the event of a big disaster, what do we actually need to do? So organizations need to plan for this, and they need to set up what we call a recovery policy. A policy is like a fancy document that businesses create to basically put a big list of things together to say what you will do. So recovery of a disaster, you need to think about how you're going to get back to normal again. So the first thing is that you're going to need all of your data backed up. The best place to do this is not in the same place, because obviously if that place burns down or there's an earthquake or something, all the data is going to be lost. So one thing that you can do is buy or rent alternative premises. So that could be a different office building that you might need to rent or purchase temporarily to get back running again. Now, cloud software and data is stored in different locations. So that's going to be obviously a lot easier to restore because we know that it's safe in a different position in the world. This image of a network truck is basically a portable truck that sometimes networks can send to a particular location, and they can give you temporary network access. So it will allow you to get up and running to send communications, get your internet back up and running in the event of a disaster. Now this policy document is going to be quite a complicated document. It takes a lot of planning to put together, but it's also very important. So everybody in the business, they need to be assigned a particular role, and then each person will know exactly what they need to do in a disaster. So you'll have nice clear guidelines telling you exactly what you need to do if something goes wrong. A recovery plan might actually help the business to consider what you're going to do clearly. Obviously, some companies that depend heavily on computers, so things like obviously Apple and Microsoft and Google and places like that, they are all based on computers a lot of the time. They need to have a power backup as well. So what we can use is something called generators. So there's two different types. You can basically have battery packs and you can have diesel fuel generators as well. So if the power supply is to fail, we can make sure that all of the computers and the data and the air conditioning that keeps everything cool, that can all stay online by using battery and diesel packs. Okay, so that is the last video as part of Learning Game A1, and that is everything you need to know for that. So one thing that you could do now is just go back over some of the keywords and think that you can remember them all and learn all of the definitions. So if you go to the website called cram.com, type St. Nick's BTEC DIT A1 in the search box, and then you can use the flashcards or click games, and you can play the Jewels of Wisdom game and try matching up the keywords.